Jaya Rinde, Jaya Shri Rinde. Madhava Kunja Bihari Jai Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivara Dhari Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivara Dhari Yashoda Nandana Vraja Jana Ranjana Yashoda Yashoda Nandana Vraja Jana Ranjana Yashoda Yamuna Tira Vanachari Yamuna Yamuna Tira Vanachari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivara Dhari Jaya Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivara Dari Yashoda Nandana Braja Jana Ranjana Yashoda Nandana Braja Jana Ranjana Yashoda Nandana Braja Jana Ranjana Yamuna Tira Vanachari Yamuna Tira Vanachari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jayam Vishnupad Paramahansa Parivrajikacharya Sata Shishimad, His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami, Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai, Anantakoti Vaishnav Vrinda Ki Jai, Namacharya Srila Haridas Thakur Ki Jai, Prem Se Kaho, Sri Krishna Chaitanya, Prabhu Nityananda, Sri Adwaita, Gadadhar, Sivasati, Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Ki Jai, Shri Radha Krishna Gopagopanath Sham Kund, Radha Kund Giri Govardhana Ki Jai, Vrindavan Dham Ki Jai, Mayapur Dham Ki Jai, Navadvip Dham Ki Jai, Ganga Maya Ki Jai, Yamuna Maya Ki Jai, Tulsi Devi Ki Jai, Samaveda Bhakta Vrinda Ki Jai, Gaura Premananda, Hari Hari Bolo, all glories to the assembled devotees, Hare Krishna, all glories to the assembled devotees, Hare Krishna, all glories to the assembled devotees, Hare Krishna, all glories to Shishi Guru and Garanga and His Divine Grace, Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. Om Namo, excuse me. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. So we're reading from the 10th canto, chapter 51, which is the deliverance of Muchakunda, text 47. Mamaisha Kalo Ajita Nishpalo Gato Raja Shionadha Madasya Bhupate Martyatma Buddhahe Sutta Dara Kosha Bushu Asajamanasya Duranta Chintaya Mamaisha Kalojita Nishvalogato Rajashi Yonadamadashabutpate Martyatma Buddhe Sutadara Kosha Bush Sajamanasya Duranta Chintaya Mamaisha Kalo Jita Nishvalogato Rajashriyo Nada Madasha Bhupate Madhyatma Bude Sutadara Koshabush Sajamanasya Duranta Chintaya Mamaisha Kalo Jita Nishvalokato Rajashriyo Nada Madasya Bhupate Madhyatma Bude Sutadara Koshabush Sajamanasya Duranta Chintaya Manchakalo Jita Nishvalokato Mashakalo Jita Nishvalokato Rajashvina Madasya Bhutpate Sajamanasya Duranta Chintaya Mashakalo Jita Nishvalokato Rajashvina Madasya Bhutpate Madhya Budev Sutarajash Sajamanasya Duranta Chintaya Mamaisha Kalo Jita Nishvalokato Rajashvina Nadamasya Bhupate Mayatma Bude Saradara Koshabush Mama, my, Ishaha, this, Kalaha, time, Ajita, O unconquerable one, Nishvalaha, fruitlessly, Gataha, now gone, Raja, by kingdom, Shriha, and opulence, Unadha, built up, Madasya, whose intoxication, Bhupate, a king of the earth, Martya, the mortal body, Atma, as the self, Buddhahe, whose mentality, Sutta, to children, Dara, wives, Kosha, treasury, Bushu, and land, Asajamanasya, becoming attached, Duranta, endless, Chintaya, with anxiety. So translation, I have wasted all this time, O unconquerable one, becoming more and more intoxicated by my domain and opulence as an earthly king, misidentifying the mortal body as the self, becoming attached to children, wives, treasury, and land, I suffered endless anxiety. So we can repeat. I have wasted all this time, O unconquerable one, becoming more and more intoxicated by my domain and opulence as an earthly king, misidentifying the mortal body as the self, becoming attached to children, wives, treasury, and land, I suffered endless anxiety. So purport shared by the disciples and servants of His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada, Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. Having in the previous verse condemned those who misuse the valuable human form of life for mundane purposes, Muchukunda now admits that he himself falls into this category. He intelligently wants to take advantage of the Lord's association and become a pure devotee once and for all. So, Om Jnana Timiranda Shah, Gyananjana Shalakya, Chakshurun Militam, Yena Tasmai Shri, Gurave Namaha. So I'll read Sanatana Goswami's commentary because it encapsulates both Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur and Jiva Goswami's commentary, saying the same thing, only expanding on what both of them share. So I've wasted many yugas, Esha Kalaha. This is the best time since you have appeared now, Esha Kalaha, but I have wasted it, or this time at the end of Dwapara Yuga has been wasted. O Lord, not under the control of time, or, O Lord, who has not been controlled by me through bhakti. Thus, my time has been wasted. I think I am a king and have become completely intoxicated with domain and wealth. Thus, I think I am the body, or because I think I am the body, I identify as a king and become intoxicated. I am constantly worried about raising children, etc. That is described in the following. Idam hadya maya labdam. Today I have obtained this. Bhagavad Gita 16:13. Or I was overcome with worries, ending in suffering. Not only was my time spent uselessly, but it was full of grief also. Or a person like me does not worship your lotus feet, thus I pass my life uselessly. But not only is it useless because of not worshiping you, it gives suffering because of worrying about the kingdom. I am not any different. I have wasted so many yugas. Why? You have not brought people like me under control. Ajita. He explains the obstacles to devotion. I have identified myself as a controller of the whole world. Then I become increasingly intoxicated with the wealth of my kingdom. Then I identified with my mortal body and became attached to sons, wife, treasury, and land. Then I was overcome with unending worries, duranta chintaya, about gaining more, as explained in the Gita, idam adya maya labdham. Or I was overcome with worries, ending in suffering. Not only was my time spent uselessly, but it was also full of grief. In so many ways, to me, it encapsulates material existence, the dilemma we're in, and the whole purpose for why we're trying to become Krishna conscious, and really trying to identify, if we go with the basics, identify with who the Supreme Personality of Godhead is and who we are and our relationship. And in doing so, eradicating the suffering that we've got and looking at, clearly looking at and trying to understand what are these different obstacles, because that's what he shares, Sanatana Goswami shares, is that in sharing, Muchukunda is sharing what these obstacles are, and it's becoming so obsessed and enwrapped up in the material world without Krishna in the center, that everything becomes suffering, and that if we take our relationship with Krishna and make that the center of our lives, then all of our suffering is going to be gone. And he's being humble about this. He's looking at his life, he's being introspective, and he's sharing the fact that he's wasted so much time. And of course, obviously, for me personally, I'm constantly recognizing that fact of how much time I'm not actually bringing Krishna into my life, and therefore any of the struggles that I have, mentally, physically, whatever obstacles they are, I'm struggling with those and not accepting them or being frustrated by them, to the degree to which I have not put Krishna in the center of my life. That's the bottom line. And Krishna's our whole shelter. He's everything that we have. He can provide us with everything. I mean, we can walk through this life. And I guess the example that comes to mind, the metaphor that comes to mind, is like a lotus petal and the raindrop falling off of that, the water droplet falling off of that. It's unaffected by those things. I mean, it's not that we're inhuman and that we don't have hearts and that we're emotionless robots, that go through devotional life, but we're able to manage it no matter what. And we're able to manage it no matter what because we're constantly being held by Krishna, right? When we chant the holy names of the Maha Mantra, my spiritual master quite often mentions that he realized early on that he could walk through this devotional life because he constantly had his best friend with him, in this chanting of the holy names. And so we have that opportunity every day to find Krishna, to look for Krishna, just like the gopis, right? They're looking, where is Krishna? Where is Krishna? And we can do that when we're chanting our japa. Where is Krishna? Where is Krishna? I want to be with you. I want to be your servant. I want to perform this devotional service, serving you so that you'll be happy. And I was thinking about that, as it was sharing these obstacles, and identifying them, that wanting to be the controller and intoxicated with all these worldly possessions, worldly mentality is probably the worst, even over, possessions, because it's, this thinking, feeling, and willing that happens. And when we're thinking about all these possessions, it's, this mentality that we have, and then thinking that this body, all of this is this misleading mentality that we have, and this skewed vision of, thinking that somehow we're going to be happy as long as we have these material comforts. But as we mature in devotional life, Krishna may take those comforts away. He may take those quote unquote apparent security blankets and rip them away, because he's trying to push us closer and closer to taking shelter and depending on him, versus anything else, not depending on the body, not depending on money, not depending on our intelligence, but depending on our heart and our connection, the degree to which we have that connection with Krishna, right? And so everything we do to search for Krishna and bring him into our heart during the day is what's going to give us the continued strength to carry on with the ultimate test of having no money and no body and no intelligence, is the time of death. The time of death is not an easy trip. I mean, it's just not going to be easy. Leaving the body, I think it was, now I can't remember because my brain's going into pop quiz mode because it doesn't. But, at the time of death, every cell in the body is screaming, don't leave, don't leave. The soul wants to stay in the body. It's what we're comfortable with. It's what we know. But everything we're doing in building this relationship with Krishna is to prepare us for that day, of leaving the body and not being attached to those things. And so if you think about it, if we're attached to those things, maybe like Spider-Man with his webs and going out and shooting and attaching things and collecting them, to ourselves and in our mind, the more we're attached to, the more we're going to have to let go of, the more that has to be ripped away at the time of death. Whereas if we attach ourselves to Krishna,
And the heart, he's what's going to carry us through that. And we won't have all these things pulling us in the opposite direction. We'll be going with Krishna in the heart, and it'll be so much easier, and then in the hopes of also, at least my desire is to be in the association of the devotees when I leave my body, so that I have, help with that process. I mean, it's like when I'm was dancing, my degree is in dance, and when I was performing, I always wanted my family and friends there, because then I had this, security blanket. I had this connection with these people, and then I could give my heart to people that I actually knew, when I was performing. And so, it's very similar. When we have this familial, the more familiar connections we have in seeing everybody as part and parcel of Krishna and part of our extended family, those things carry us forward at the time of death. And then we're able to, walk through that ultimate suffering of, going through death. But even better is to have that extended family with us as we walk through devotional service and that support system, so that we know that we're ultimately not alone, and to remind us, oh wow, there's somebody who's attached to Krishna. There's somebody who's attached to Krishna. There's somebody attached to Krishna. Every one of you attached to Krishna. And so that's constantly reminding me of Krishna consciousness, and taking this deep into my heart. And so either we worry for Krishna and have these anxieties about how we're going to serve Krishna, or we're going to worry about how we're going to take everything that we have with us, or keep all these things that we have. And so one of the verses that's mentioned is 16:13. And it's, pretty famous verse, and it's something that, even reading today's verse reminds you of it, is in the Bhagavad Gita, the demoniac person thinks, so much wealth do I have today, and I will gain more according to my schemes. So much is mine now, and it will increase in the future more and more. He is my enemy, and I have killed him, and my other enemies will also be killed. I am the Lord of everything. I am the enjoyer. I am perfect, powerful, and happy. I am the richest man surrounded by aristocratic relatives. There is none so powerful and happy as I am. I shall perform sacrifices. I shall give some charity, and thus I shall rejoice. In this way, such persons are deluded by ignorance. And the thing is that, as devotees, we may not have that degree of, demoniac mentality, but still, if we have some material attachment left, there's still some, there's still some of that mentality there of wanting to be the controller and not really fully surrendering to Krishna's will, and wanting to hold on to things unnecessarily. And Prabhupada shares that the demoniac man knows no limit to his desires to acquire money. Thus, that is unlimited. He thinks only of how much assessment he has just now, and schemes to engage that stock of wealth further and further. For that reason, he does not hesitate to act in any sinful way, and so deals in the black market or illegal gratification. He is enamored by the possessions he already has, such as land, family, house, and bank balance, and he is always planning to improve them. He believes his own strength and does not know that whatever he is gaining is due to his past good deeds. He is given the opportunity to accumulate such things, but he has no conception of past causes. So you get wrapped up in all this whirlpool and misidentifying, which is what Muchukunda is sharing, misidentifying with this body. And I mean, I have to say, it's probably really, one of the most challenging things of having this body and coming to the knowledge that we're actually not really this body. We're not really this mentality. We're not really these emotions. We're really this soul who's connected to Krishna. But when you're walking around in this body and, have all this wiring plugged into you with all this mentality, and all your past activities, that are embedded, it can be a good bit challenging to not think that you're this body and to think that you're limited by this, which again is the reason for attaching ourselves to Krishna, is to, disidentify or not identify with this body and realize that we're a servant. And even, serving the body in the context that this body is a temple and belongs to Krishna. It houses the soul, it houses Krishna. And so taking care of it as much as you can so that it interferes the least, but also realizing that it shouldn't be an obstacle to your devotional service. And that goes with our mentality and so many different things. And so again, thinking that we are our own strength and not really giving credit to Krishna for our strength, our intelligence, our beauty, our wealth, or whatever it is that we may have, those are all gifts from Krishna. And so that's, at least one way in which we can bring Krishna into our lives, is to think that everything that we do that's done well or has any significance or has any benefit or that's done right, or any of those things that's good, any of the talents or gifts that we have, is to think and understand that Krishna's the one who's given those to us. It's not that we own those. Krishna's given those. And so that can humble us in understanding and not getting wrapped up into that mentality, in other words. And so it goes on and it shares, that continued mentality, but I also, in the purport, about, the demoniac mentality, but this also somehow reminded me of the fourth sloka of the Shikshashtaka, and I'll read that, and some of what is shared in the purport to this. It's pretty amazing. So nadanam najanam nasundarim kavitam va jagadisha kamaye mama janmaniv janmanishvare bhavatad bhaktir ahaituki tvai. O Lord of the universe, I do not desire material wealth. This is the opposite of what we're talking about, right? This is the opposite mentality of wanting everything, thinking we're the controller, and that I want all these lovely things to be attached to me and show off, who I am, who I think I am on an external level. So I do not desire material wealth, materialistic followers, a beautiful wife, or fruitive activities described in flowery language. All I want, life after life, is unmotivated devotional service to you. Unmotivated. So not selfish, right? Self-centered, but serving. It is imperative that in the beginning, the sincere sadhaka attentively hear his guru chanting the holy name, and thereafter himself chant the holy name, free from all nama aparad. The process of chanting guarantees that the four qualities described in the previous shloka will gradually blossom in the heart. Conversely, if a sadhaka's attachment to sensual pleasure is not severed, then his original spiritual identity does not become manifest, in which case bhakti, which is the intrinsic flavor of the Lord's Ladini potency, cannot be transformed into bhava, or amorous spiritual mellows. Sadhana bhakti means the process of chanting, and the pure form of sadhana bhakti is clearly indicated in the phrase nadanam najanam. The principal symptom of bhakti is loving devotional service to Lord Krishna. I was thinking, the principal bhakti is loving devotional service, right? But also, if you think about it, if you can change that a little bit grammatically on the emphasis, is that the symptom of bhakti is loving devotional service, like loving to do devotional service, right? Not just loving devotional service, like devotional service that's loving, giving and loving, but it's also loving to do devotional service, right? The secondary symptom is freedom from all desires. anabilashita shunyam, outside of the path of bhakti. So, which is untainted by karma and gyan. So again, outside of anything that's done outside of the path of bhakti, anything that's done outside of devotional service is what has the potential to carry us away and keep us at a limited distance from our devotional service. As long as loving devotion to Krishna is encumbered by desires for karma, jnana yoga, the highest stage of loving devotional service, or uttama bhakti, will not manifest. It remains as a mere shadow of devotion, or bhakti apalash. Dissipating shadow bhakti. The instructions in this shloka are meant to dissipate this very shadow bhakti. O Lord, I do not hanker for wealth, a following, or beautiful verses. Here, dhanam refers to the wealth of piety accrued when one strictly follows the path of varnashram dharma and related karmakanda activities. It further implies the paraphernalia one needs to fulfill his sensual desires in this life and to ensure further luxury and sensuality with a next birth in the heavenly planets. Janam refers to wife, sons, servants, subjects, friends, and relatives. So in other words, being attached to all those is what keeps us in this continuous cycle of birth, death, old age, and disease. And, we're building our subtle body by all these, molding our subtle body, by any subtle desires that we carry, and we carry those on into the next life, and it just keeps going and going and going. And so, by not attaching ourselves to Krishna, but these other things and having these hankerings and these fears, ultimately it's fear, right? Fear of being alone, fear of being poor, fear of all these different fears of not having love. All these things can be accomplished by having, a relationship with Krishna. And I guess I think about that sometimes, just to be honest, is that there's times when I do feel lonely, and I wish I had companionship to carry me through this process of bhakti yoga. And, ultimately I know that my best friend is Krishna and that I don't need anything else but that. And I have the associations I have the association of the devotees. But the mind has a tendency, to not, I don't know, I guess maybe it's not wanting to do it myself and have help doing it, I don't know. But, ultimately I know beyond any shadow of a doubt that I have the greatest protection under the service of my spiritual master, and that's connecting me to Krishna, right? So the king of education, the proper understanding of education and learning is that which generates attraction and attachment for the lotus feet of the Supreme Lord. So anything that we can do that attaches us to Krishna is the real king of education. The phrase Sundarim Kavitam thus does not refer to scriptural narrations of Lord Krishna's pastimes, but to mundane literature. So in other words, what they're defining is the things that can carry us away, these things. I don't want these things. I don't want mundane literature or dry philosophical, esoteric, technical subjects. Lord Chaitanya's prayer begs not for such trivialities, but to be engaged birth after birth in the loving service of the sweet Lord of the heart, to develop unstinting devotion devoid of any and all conditional demands. So you got to ask ourselves, what conditions am I asking of Krishna, when I don't agree with something that's happening in my life? Because once we take up, my spiritual master says this all the time, that once we take up devotional service and make that commitment, Krishna says, okay, I've got you and I'm in control. And so he gives us, it's not karma, but it's token reactions. And so, understanding that these things that are happening to us are because of Krishna's arrangements, and checking ourselves not to add these conditions subconsciously or maybe even consciously of like, well, I'll perform devotional service if, right, I can get this or this or this, or why isn't this happening for me, right? We have these subtle conditions in the mind for performing devotional service meeting. And it's very subtle, and it's not to be, you know, cruel to ourselves, but just being aware of the fact, right? And just understanding that unconditional means a devotion uncorrupted by inferior desires for self-aggrandizement or carnal pleasure, a pristine spiritual love overflowing the heart with transcendental mellows, undeviating in pure love, means to satisfy Lord Sri Krishna only, right? So, I mean, all these things are amazing, and it goes on, and I wanted to read the next one, but I'm not sure that I have enough, because it also shows, you know, what we're really codependent on, and it looks like maybe there's not more. So victory, the next section of this is victory depends upon the Lord's will, the Lord's mercy. The soul struggles to triumph over repeated birth and death and other material miseries is beyond him, for such victory depends entirely upon the supreme Lord's will. Yet all miseries automatically cease by the Lord's desire when, by the Lord's desire, one is rescued from the cycle of birth and death. Therefore, what is the efficacy of a gross materialistic prayer that is contradictory to the precepts of pure devotion? Lord Chaitanya's prayer is this: until such time as the cycle of birth and death is brought to an end by the grace of God, let me have unconditional service unto his lotus feet, life after life, regardless of what my material situation may be. And that's what our attitude should be. That's what our consciousness should be, is accepting no matter what's coming into our life as Krishna's arrangement, and understanding that these are token reactions for our past activities, and what purify us, brain's just going, educate us into being tolerant, right? It helps us understand what tolerant is. It helps us understand what compassion is, and ultimately, you know, helps us hold on by loving Krishna. I mean, I can't think of anything greater to have than a life jacket that can't be taken off. It can't, you may be swimming in the material ocean, but once you've taken shelter of Krishna, that life jacket is never going away. It's not going to be, ripped off by accident by a huge, great wave. As long as you're willing to stay in the boat of devotional service, and take shelter of Krishna, will never drown. We'll always have a safety jacket. We'll always be protected devotionally and internally by Krishna. And then just seeing that the challenges that we face, are helping us bring us closer to him, because we still have some things to work out. We still have, a little bit of coal that's on the heart that needs to be purified. And there's nobody but Krishna that can purify or remove that coal, like covering on our hearts. We can try, but we'll just get dirty. We're not capable. It's only through the spiritual master in Krishna that we can have a relationship with Krishna. And obviously the root of that is humility. And so when we do try to take up, as I was mentioning in the first part of class, is, we do try to bring in Krishna in every aspect of our life, is, doing that with humility, whatever it is, whether it's chanting, our devotional service, trying to keep a humble mood and understand who's actually given us this opportunity to perform, to cook, to dress, to make flower vases, to clean the temple, whatever it is that we've been given. So, yes, ma'am. Yeah. Yeah. So Rudrani was, yeah. Well, Rudrani was sharing that it's really important to, have compassionate and loving relationships and be aware of how we interrelate. I think it's also important to realize, too, in that whole process, knowing for myself that when I act imperfectly, I'm aware of that, and to also be able to try to forgive ourselves and others for their actions, knowing that we're just struggling to get to this point of purely loving Krishna.
Govindam Adipurusham Tamaham Bhajami. Govindam Adipurusham Tamaham Bhajami. Govindam Adipurusham Tamaham Bhajami. Enam Kanvantam Aravindanalayatacham Varhamatam Samasitam Buddhasundarangam Kandar Agom Vidamaniya Nishesha Shobha Govindam Adipurusham Tamaham Bhajami. Govindam Adipurusham Tamaham Bhajami. Govindam Adipurusham Tamaham Bhajami. Andani Yasa Sakalen Priya Priti Manti Vasyanti Panti Kayanti Chiram Naganti Ananda Chinmaya Sadhu Jala Vigrahasya Govindam Adipurusham Tamaham Bhajami. 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 Govindam
Chandra Chushitala Parakamala Koti Chushitala Nitai Parakamala Koti Chandra Shushitala Nitai Parakamala Koti Chandra Shushitala Yechayai Jagataduraya Yechayai Jagataduraya Hey no nitai bine bai Radha Krishna paite nai Hey no nitai bine bai No Radha Krishna paite nai Drida Kori Daronita Pai Drida Kori Daronita Pai Drida Kori Daronita Pai Drida Kori Daronita Say Sambandha Mahijar Britta Janma Gelo Tar Nitai Zanda Darhijar Britta Janma Gelo Tar Say Pashu Boroduchara Say Pashu Boroduchara Nitaina Bolia Mukhe Majilo Samsara Sukhe Nitaivano Mukhe Majilo Samsara Sukhe Vidya Kule Ki Gori Betar 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 Ahankari Mata Hoya Nitai Pada Pasariya Ahankari Mata Toya Nitai Pada Pasariya Asatya Re Satya Kori Mani Asatya Re Satya Kori Mani Nitai Karuna Nitai Karuna Habe Braje Radha Krishna Habe Nitai Karuna Habe Braje Radha Krishna